The Fifth Element wasn't just a sci-fi movie, it was chaos in couture, a film that dropped flying taxis into neon war zones and made opera sound like the future. But behind the wild costumes and cosmic noise, nothing was easy. The script took decades to finish. The hero and villain never shared a scene. And the man originally meant to play Ruby Road refused to wear the wig. These are 15 weird facts about The Fifth Element, buried in the mayhem where even perfect beings couldn't predict the madness that would unfold. 1. It started as a teenager's escape fantasy. Long before flying cars and laser battles, there was just a lonely boy in a small French village. Luc Besson didn't grow up surrounded by art or Hollywood dreams. He had isolation and imagination. At 16, he started writing what would eventually become The Fifth Element. Back then, it wasn't a film idea. It was a place to hide, a universe he could escape into. He created Lele, Zorgs, the Mandashawans, worlds within worlds, stories that made sense when nothing else around him did. It took more than 20 years, but that teenager's escape became one of the most expensive sci-fi films ever made. Beneath all the visual madness was still that lonely kid writing his way out of reality into something more colorful. 2. The original script was 400 pages long. Besson didn't just write a movie, he wrote a galaxy. The first draft wasn't a screenplay, but a sprawling epic spanning multiple planets, dozens of alien species with full languages, histories, and political systems. It was meant to be a trilogy, 3 full stories with galactic councils, entire civilizations, and characters with rich backstories who became background extras. Besson spent years world-building layer by layer, sketching cities, naming species, mapping alien religions just to explain a single prop. But when studios saw the scope, they pushed back. Too weird, too big, too risky. So he did the unthinkable. Cut it all down to one film. What we saw in theaters was just the center slice of a much bigger universe, the rest still locked in Besson's notebooks, waiting for a return trip. 3. Bruce Willis. Almost wasn't Corbin Dallas. Before Willis signed on, the studio wanted Mel Gibson. Fresh off Braveheart, Gibson was a global star with proven box office muscle. But Besson hesitated. Gibson's energy felt wrong, too brooding and grounded for a film about flying taxis and orange hair. Besson wanted someone who could handle chaos but still crack a smile in the middle of it. Willis said yes, and everything changed. Corbin Dallas became more than a soldier. He became a reluctant hero with dry wit, bad luck, and a cab full of destiny. With Gibson, it would have been darker and more serious. With Bruce, it learned to fly. Sometimes casting isn't about star power. It's about finding the right frequency for your particular brand of madness. 4. Gary Oldman. Did it as a favor. Oldman didn't audition or chase the role. He barely read the script. A few years earlier, Besson had produced Oldman's passion project, so when Besson called asking for a favor, Oldman said yes without hesitation. But privately, he admitted he had no idea what the story was about. Still, he showed up in a plastic helmet, channeling Texas oil barons and cartoon villains, creating one of the most bizarre sci-fi performances of the 90s. He later said he hated the movie, but fans loved every second of his unhinged energy. Sometimes the best villains come from actors who think they're in a completely different film. Oldman's confusion became Zorg's perfect alien menace. Dangerous precisely because it made no conventional sense. 5. Milla Jovovich Beat, 8,000 actresses. The search for Lele was massive. Over 8,000 women auditioned, including established stars and rising talents. Elizabeth Berkley, fresh off Showgirls, gave a bold reading. Others came with sci-fi swagger, practiced alien grace, and strong accents. But none felt genuinely otherworldly. Then Jovovich walked in. She didn't speak loudly or try to own the room, but Besson said it hit him instantly. She didn't seem like she was from anywhere on Earth. She looked like she belonged to the future. Her reading wasn't polished, it was pure alien without trying. Out of 8,000 famous and unknown women, they chose the one who felt like a beautiful mystery, She didn't just wear the orange costume, she made it iconic because the Fifth Element didn't need fame. It needed presence that felt genuinely extraterrestrial. 6. Besson's wife played the diva, while he fell for someone else. The alien opera singer who takes the stage mid-film wasn't just a voice. She was Besson's wife, Maiwen. Tall, striking, hidden under layers of blue makeup as Diva Plava Laguna, she was a French actress and director in her own right. Besson cast her as the mysterious figure whose voice literally holds the key to saving the universe. But behind the scenes, something else was happening. As Besson directed the film, he started falling for someone else, Milla Jovovich. The connection began with shared language lessons and late-night script notes, but it grew fast. By filming's end, Besson had quietly separated from Maiwen and was openly with Milla. The woman who played the key to saving the world watched from backstage as her husband drifted toward a different kind of Fifth Element. 7. Lele and Besson created their own language. Lele didn't just speak with her eyes. She had a fully constructed alien tongue. Besson invented the divine language while writing, creating over 400 unique words with consistent grammar and pronunciation rules. He and Jovovich worked on it together, refining and practicing until it became fluent. But as their off-screen relationship deepened, they started using it for something more personal, love letters and private notes that no one else on set could understand. It became their secret code, spoken between scenes and scribbled on paper. The romance didn't last, but the language did. In the film, every syllable Jovovich speaks isn't gibberish. It's fluent, practiced, and deeply personal. Alien on screen, intimate in real life. A perfect fusion of professional and personal creativity. 8. Jovovich did her own stunts. Despite the danger, Lele wasn't just a savior. She was a whirlwind of raw power that defied gravity. Much of that on-screen ferocity came directly from Jovovich herself. While many actors rely on stunt doubles, she was determined to embody every explosive movement. She trained relentlessly in fight choreography, wire work, and fast-paced combat sequences. The iconic corridor fight scene where Lele takes down multiple armed guards? That was Jovovich contorting her body, throwing precise kicks, enduring grueling takes. Her commitment pushed boundaries, risking bruises and exhaustion through countless high-energy sequences. She performed wire work that could have seriously injured her, all because Besson wanted the ultimate weapon to feel authentically human. For the Fifth Element to truly work, its perfect being had to bleed, fight, and fall with genuine grit. 9. Zorg's weapon actually worked too well. That insane all-in-one superweapon Zorg demonstrates wasn't just sci-fi nonsense, it actually functioned. The prop department built a fully working version, complete with flame jets, and when they tested it, it nearly torched the entire set. One blast went too high, flames licked the ceiling, crew members scrambled for extinguishers. No one was hurt, but the message was clear. This movie wasn't playing it safe. Even the props were dangerous, which was exactly how Besson liked it. The weapon's multiple functions weren't just visual gags, they were working mechanisms that could have legitimately hurt someone. Sometimes the most convincing special effects are the ones that pose real special hazards. In a film about the ultimate weapon, even the fake ultimate weapons carried genuine destructive power. 10. The Mandashawan actors were slowly melting. Those ancient, wise aliens in the opening sequence moved slowly for a reason beyond character design. They were literally overheating. The Mandashawan suits weighed 80 pounds each. Thick foam with minimal ventilation and no cooling systems. Actors shuffled through ancient corridors not for dramatic effect, but because they were on the verge of collapse. One performer actually fainted from heat exhaustion mid-scene, had to be pulled from the costume and rehydrated. They finished the shoot, but barely. What looked like elegant alien choreography was actually survival, one heavy step at a time. The beings meant to represent ancient wisdom and patience were portrayed by actors fighting not to pass out. Sometimes the most convincing otherworldly performances come from people genuinely struggling to exist in otherworldly conditions. 11. Ruby Rod's costume. Was torture disguised as fashion? Ruby Rod wasn't subtle. Leopard print, glittering microphone, screams that could stop time. But the most outrageous part wasn't the performance. It was surviving the costume. Jean-Paul Gaultier designed it to be tight, loud, and completely impractical. It weighed 50 pounds, had a rigid spine, and offered zero flexibility. Chris Tucker couldn't sit, couldn't lean forward, could barely breathe. Between takes, he didn't rest in chairs. He leaned against walls, stood in corners, sweated through entire shooting days without relief. Yet on screen, he's chaos incarnate, bouncing and stealing scenes with every breath. The loudest voice in the galaxy came from someone who couldn't even sit down. Sometimes the most explosive performances require the most constrictive conditions, pure energy, trapped in impossible circumstances. 12. The flying cars were models suspended on wire rigs. Those iconic flying taxis zipping through neon-lit New York weren't CGI magic. They were meticulously crafted miniature models dangling from nearly invisible wire rigs. The production team built dozens of detailed vehicle models, each one hand-painted with weathering effects and tiny interior details you'd never see on screen. They suspended them from computer-controlled wire systems that could simulate complex flight patterns through the miniature cityscape. The challenge was making toy cars look like they weighed tons while flying through convincing air traffic. Operators spent months choreographing aerial ballet with model aircraft, timing movements to create the illusion of a living, breathing, sky-bound metropolis. When Corbin's taxi spins out of control, that's a model car on wires performing actual stunts. The future of transportation was built by hand, one miniature flight at a time, proving that sometimes the most convincing high-tech effects come from decidedly low-tech methods. 13. Jean-Paul Gaultier created 1,000 costumes by hand. Most movies dressed their characters. The Fifth Element dressed an entire galaxy. Besson didn't want traditional sci-fi uniforms or recycled space armor. He wanted fashion that told stories, so he called in legendary couturier Jean-Paul Gaultier. This wasn't just designing a few standout pieces. Gaultier built over 1,000 costumes by hand, creating a complete aesthetic universe. Every alien race had its own fashion code, silhouettes, fabrics, and cultural rules. The Mandashawan were wrapped like ancient priests. The Mangalores dressed like snarling mercenaries in metal and grit. Even background characters who appeared for 2 seconds wore one-of-a-kind pieces. Taxi drivers had reflective streetwear. Flight attendants wore skin-tight neoprene corsets. Security guards looked like nightclub bouncers from another planet. It wasn't just costuming, it was world-building stitched into every scene. In The Fifth Element, you didn't need exposition to understand different cultures. You just needed to look at what they wore. 14. The film's cityscapes mixed miniatures with digital paint. Those massive urban landscapes with towering skyscrapers and impossible vertical highways started as hand-built miniature cities. The art department constructed dozens of detailed model buildings, complete with tiny windows, architectural details, and layered lighting systems for depth and atmosphere. They filmed these miniatures with motion control cameras, just like the original Star Wars, then enhanced them with early digital effects to add movement and life. The seamless blend created cityscapes that felt both tactile and dreamlike, real enough to believe, impossible enough to inspire wonder. Flying cars moved through actual physical spaces that had been enhanced with digital magic. The technique gave the film's world a unique texture that pure CGI couldn't match, a future that felt lived in rather than computer-generated. In a movie obsessed with color and chaos, even the background environments had to feel handcrafted and personal, built with the same attention to detail as Gaultier's costumes. 15. Multipass became an accidental cultural phenomenon. It wasn't meant to be a catchphrase, just a throwaway moment of broken English. When Lulu holds up her identification card and mispronounces Multipass in her endearing alien accent, it was simply Jovovich playing with language barriers. But somehow it stuck with audiences in ways no one predicted. Fans started quoting it, mimicking Jovovich's pronunciation, turning it into an inside joke that spread far beyond the film's initial release. The word began appearing in video games like Borderlands and Cyberpunk 2077, not as plot devices but as digital tributes to one of sci-fi's weirdest cult classics. Convention-goers adopted it as a greeting, cosplayers made replica cards, and internet memes turned it into shorthand for quirky sci-fi references. One mispronounced word, delivered with perfect innocence by a genetically perfect being, became more memorable than entire monologues from other films. Sometimes the smallest moments create the biggest cultural ripples, proving that in a universe full of elaborate set pieces, audiences often remember the human touches best. The Fifth Element was too loud, too strange, too bright, too French for traditional sci-fi. But fans didn't want traditional. They wanted transportation to somewhere that felt like pure imagination set loose. Besson created a film that felt less like a movie and more like a fever dream where fashion conquered physics and love really could save the universe. 25 years later, it still feels like the future we secretly hope we're flying toward. Drop a comment below. What legendary film should we dive into next? Because in a universe full of movies, some stories refuse to stay grounded.